Hi there, I'm Lorraine. This Christmas was supposed to be about family, love, and belonging. But instead, I got a call telling me it would be an adults-only gathering. No kids allowed. And yet, when I arrived, the house was filled with laughter and children who weren't mine. How do you heal when the ones who hurt you are the ones you're supposed to trust? Tell me, have you ever felt like an outsider in your own family? The lights in our little apartment twinkled softly against the fading afternoon light, casting warm glows on Eli's beaming face. He had insisted on hanging every single ornament himself, despite how uneven our tree now looked. I smiled, brushing a few fallen pine needles from the couch. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. The phone buzzed on the counter. I wiped my hands on my jeans and picked it up, seeing Mom's name flashing across the screen. A part of me hesitated. Another part, the dutiful daughter still trapped inside, pressed accept. "Lorraine, sweetheart," came her voice, syrupy sweet, almost too careful. "About Christmas Eve. We're doing something a little different this year." I held my breath. "It's going to be an adults-only gathering. You understand, right? Just some wine, nice conversation. No little ones running around this time." My heart dropped, but my voice stayed even. "Of course, Mom. I understand." I hung up before she could hear the crack in my voice. Eli was sprawled on the floor, drawing pictures of reindeer with crayons. He looked up at me, his eyes wide and trusting. "Is Grandma excited to see us?" I forced a smile so tight it hurt. "Grandma loves you very much, buddy. This year's just a little different." He nodded solemnly and returned to his reindeer, unaware that somewhere in my chest, something had started to wither. The days crawled by slower than the December dusk. Eli would ask little questions, like why Christmas trees always went up in Grandma's front window, or if she would have his favorite cinnamon cookies again this year. Each time, I stumbled for answers, patching together half-truths that scraped against my throat. He never noticed. Or maybe he did, and just didn't say anything. I began to dread Christmas Eve with a heaviness that didn't fit the season. When the night arrived, I pulled into my parents' driveway alone. Snow crunched under my boots as I stepped out, the cold slicing through my coat. The house was glowing from every window, full of noise and light. For a second, I considered turning around, pretending I got the date wrong, pretending none of it mattered, but I didn't. Mom opened the door with a flourish, her lipstick bright against the gray of the night. "Lorraine, come in, come in!" I smiled stiffly, noting the crowded living room behind her. Laughter, music, movement, too much for just adults. I hung my coat by the door, my hands trembling slightly. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe. A small body darted past me, shrieking with laughter. Then another, and another. There, weaving between adults carrying platters of cookies, were Lacey's 3 kids, decked out in matching reindeer sweaters, cheeks flushed with excitement. I froze. More children filled the room, cousins' kids, neighbors' little ones, not hidden away, not hushed, celebrated. And Eli, my sweet, eager Eli, was home alone, believing Grandma still loved him the same. A few relatives waved at me, offering smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. I responded automatically, the weight in my chest growing heavier. Lacey beamed from the corner, snapping photos of her kids by the Christmas tree. I watched her through a haze, the bitterness rising sharp and fast. My eyes darted around, seeking acknowledgement from Mom, Dad, anyone, but none came. The hole Eli left in the room felt bigger than any of their laughter could fill. I swallowed my anger like broken glass, feeling it tear a little more with every shallow breath. I drifted through the party like a ghost, untouched and unseen. Near the dessert table, I spotted Lacey on her phone. Her face lit up with satisfaction. Curious, I moved closer. On her screen was a live post, a group shot of all the children under the Christmas tree, grinning widely beneath the caption, "Christmas full of love and laughter # family first." Something inside me shifted, hardened. They could pretend all they wanted, but not forever. The invitation came through a text, short, almost sterile. "Come by tonight. Need to talk about family matters." Vivian always made it sound like an obligation wrapped in concern. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, feeling that same gnawing in my chest I had felt when she called about Christmas. Still, I typed back a quick, "Sure, see you then," and tossed the phone onto the counter with more force than needed. Eli was humming quietly as he worked on a Lego spaceship at the kitchen table. I brushed my hand through his hair as I walked past, anchoring myself to the small, safe world we had built together. I had no idea that by the end of the night, even that would feel threatened. The house smelled of cinnamon candles and something sickly sweet I couldn't place. Moments after I stepped inside, Vivian ushered me to the kitchen table, already set with 2 mugs of coffee and a manila folder. "We've just been thinking," she began, her voice all soft corners, "about being prepared, for the future." I forced a nod, waiting. Vivian slid the folder across the table. My fingers hesitated, then flipped it open. The words jumped out like a slap. Power of attorney, full financial authorization. Vivian smiled, a little too bright. "It's just to make sure everything runs smoothly, sweetheart, in case. Well, you never know what life will throw at you." My mouth went dry. I pressed my lips together into something that might have passed for a smile and nodded. Inside, everything in me screamed. Before I could formulate a polite refusal, Douglas ambled in, pulling out a chair across from me. "Standard stuff," he said, waving his hand like it was no big deal. "Everyone should have a will. Yours just needs a few tweaks. Helps protect Eli, too." He slid another paper toward me, a draft of a family trust document. My name was there, so was Eli's. And so were clauses tying my assets to family oversight until Eli turned 18. Cold panic washed through me. I glanced at Vivian. Her hands were folded neatly on the table, her smile unchanged. The trap was beautifully set. I leaned back, letting the papers sit untouched before me. "Of course," I said lightly. "I'll have my lawyer look this over before signing anything." Vivian's smile tightened at the edges. Douglas's brow twitched. The room cooled by several degrees. Their disappointment was a living thing, coiling between us. I sipped my coffee, pretending not to notice, pretending not to feel the betrayal thudding in my temples. When I finally left, the unsigned documents were tucked neatly into my bag. Vivian stood at the door, waving, Douglas's arm slung stiffly around her shoulders. As I pulled away down the street, I glanced in the rearview mirror. They were still standing there, heads bowed together, whispering behind cupped hands. For the first time, a hollow pit opened inside me. Maybe I wasn't their daughter anymore. Maybe I was just an account number they hadn't fully claimed yet. And maybe, just maybe, they would regret ever trying. The invitation was casual. Too casual. A family dinner? Nothing fancy. Just catching up, Mom had said. The house smelled like roast beef and mashed potatoes, comfort food designed to soften edges and lull defenses. Eli stayed home with Marilyn and Curtis that evening. Another silent battle I chose not to fight tonight. As I stepped into the warm, crowded living room, a blanket of politeness settled over me. The smiles were wide but brittle, the hugs slightly too tight. I should have known. I did know. But some lessons carve themselves into you only after they draw blood. Dinner passed with a hum of clinking forks and shallow conversation. Douglas talked about fixing the garage door again. Vivian laughed too loudly at a story Lacey told about her youngest spilling juice on a client's paperwork. I moved mechanically, answering when spoken to, smiling when expected, waiting. And then, as dessert was being cleared, Douglas cleared his throat, a sound that cut clean through the low buzz of the room. He didn't stand. He didn't need to. Authority was stitched into the seams of his voice. "I've been thinking," he said, setting down his coffee cup. "It'd make a lot of sense, Lorraine, for you to help your sister out a bit, with the insurance money you received, family fairness and all that." Every muscle in my body locked tight. Around the table, heads turned, eyes bright with interest, or carefully averted. I opened my mouth but no sound came. Douglas smiled, benign and heavy at once. "It's not right for one of us to have so much while others struggle," Vivian chimed in sweetly, laying her hand gently atop Douglas's. The words dripped with syrup, hiding the knife just beneath. I scanned the table, seeking an ally. No one met my eyes. Cousin Mark studied his coffee. Aunt Sheila fussed with her napkin. The message was clear: refuse, and I would confirm every whispered accusation about my selfishness. The same accusations that had haunted me since I was old enough to say no. I pressed my palms into my lap until my nails dug crescents into my skin. Images flashed behind my eyes. Lacey's kids laughing at Christmas while Eli sat home wondering why. The way Vivian's smile tightened whenever I asked for space. Douglas nodding along whenever guilt needed reinforcement. I felt the weight of every invisible chain they had looped around me, link by link, year by year. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt furious. I forced my lips into a pleasant smile. "I'll think about it," I said softly, folding my napkin onto my plate. The table buzzed with relieved approval. The trap had snapped shut, or so they thought. The night air bit into my skin as I stepped outside. I pulled my coat tighter, staring up at the black Ohio sky. In the silence of my car, the realization settled fully into my bones. They didn't love me. They loved what they thought they could take from me, and I wasn't going to let them. The text came while I was folding laundry. A series of images flooded my phone. Shopping bags brimming with bright tissue paper, shiny gold jewelry peeking from designer boxes, glossy spa certificates. At the bottom, a chirpy message from Lacey. "Thanks for helping with Christmas." I frowned, setting down a half-folded sweatshirt. One photo showed the receipt. Handbags, perfumes, boutique kidswear with price tags that made my throat tighten. Not groceries, not school supplies, not necessities, luxury, indulgence, vanity. I scrolled, numb fingers flicking past page after page of brand names I couldn't even pronounce. Lacey's idea of family need had a price tag fit for a celebrity, not a single working mom juggling ends. I called her, heart thudding. "Hey, Lorraine," she answered, all sugar and sparkle. "Wasn't that stuff adorable? You're a lifesaver." I tried to keep my voice even. "Lacey, this isn't for the kids." There was a pause, then a bright laugh. "Oh, well, you know how it is. A few treats for myself, too. After this year, I deserve it, right?" My mouth went dry. Before I could answer, she added quickly, "And you're doing so well now. It's just a few extra things. You can afford it." Another brick laid onto the wall they were building around me. Not gratitude, not partnership, entitlement. I hung up without saying much, staring at the empty screen until it blurred. Memories twisted around me like thorns. Times I'd been told to share, to sacrifice, to be grateful for the scraps left over after others took what they wanted. Times I swallowed my needs because I thought that's what good daughters did. Every favor I'd given, every boundary I hadn't defended, now stood in judgment around me. It was never about helping. It was about how much they could squeeze before I realized I was bleeding. Sitting at my kitchen table, receipts scattered like fallen leaves, the truth hit me so hard I felt physically ill. They didn't ask because they believed in me. They asked because they counted on me never saying no. Somewhere deep inside, a line shifted, quiet, permanent. I wasn't going to be their currency anymore. As if on cue, another notification lit up my phone. Lacey again. "Can you cover these too? I'll make it up to you after the holidays." My hand tightened around the device, knuckles white with something between fury and freedom. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some debts weren't worth collecting. The dining room shimmered under strands of gold lights and polished silverware. Everything looked perfect, like a page torn from a glossy magazine about family traditions. Except it wasn't. Not for me. Not for Eli. He sat next to me, swinging his feet under the chair, trying so hard to be good. His little hand smoothed the napkin on his lap, and every few minutes, he flashed a shy smile at whoever would glance his way. I watched him with a tenderness that ached deep inside my ribs. He just wanted to belong, to be seen, to be loved. The first blow came wrapped in laughter. Eli leaned forward, wide-eyed, asking Vivian about the big star at the top of the Christmas tree. Before he could even finish, she waved her hand dismissively. "Well," she said, voice sharp, slicing through the room, "Lacey's kids don't ask 100 silly questions. They just know how to behave properly." The laughter around the table stumbled and died. Eli's cheeks flamed red. He shrank into his chair, ducking his head as if trying to disappear. I felt it, like a fist closing around my heart. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out except air thick with the weight of 1,000 swallowed words. Later, while clearing plates, I caught her voice again. Lower this time, murmured to a cousin but still sharp enough to cut. Some kids, Vivian said, clinking a spoon into a dish, you can just tell. They're not worth investing in. You know early. I stopped breathing. The ceramic plate in my hands trembled. She wasn't talking about just any child. She meant Eli. My Eli. I gripped the counter, anchoring myself against the wave of rage and heartbreak that surged up, threatening to drown me in the middle of that polished, glittering room. I made an excuse. I don't even remember what it was. Something about Eli needing to get to bed. Something polite. We bundled into the cold night without looking back. Eli fell asleep almost instantly in the back seat, his small face soft and unguarded under the glow of passing streetlights. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers cramped. Tears slipped down my cheeks, hot and silent. Tears for him, tears for me, tears for every lie I had ever told myself about second chances, about family meaning more than convenience. That night, lying awake in the silence of our apartment, I made a promise. Never again would I let them touch him. Never again would they touch me. This ends soon, very soon. The excuse was simple enough. Eli had forgotten his favorite book at my parents' house after the last gathering. I told myself I would be quick, just in and out. The driveway was empty. No festive music poured from the windows this time, just a heavy, unsettling quiet that clung to the fading afternoon light. I let myself in, calling a soft hello that dissolved into silence. I was about to head toward the study when a low, sharp laugh floated in from the kitchen. I froze. Key still clutched in my hand. I strained to listen. Vivian's voice, unmistakably smug, carried through the thin walls. "She'll keep paying," she said, the words landing like ice on my skin. "You just have to hit the right guilt points. Eli's always been the soft spot." Lacey's laughter followed, lighter, crueler. "She's predictable," she chirped. "It's like winding a toy. Push the right button, cha-ching." My breath caught somewhere between my lungs and my heart. I pressed myself against the wall, fingers digging into the keys until they bit deep into my palm. Every word drove the truth deeper. They didn't see me. They didn't love me. I was a resource, a convenience, an account number. Before I could move, Lacey's voice grew clearer, giddy now. "I told Jenna," she bragged. "It's almost funny how easy it is. Lorraine's got this stupid hero complex. She'll bend over backwards if you just cry a little." The words blurred together after that, a sickening mix of pride and entitlement. Something inside me, something that had been crumbling for months, finally, quietly, broke. I backed out the door without a sound. The cold slammed into me as I stumbled onto the porch, but I welcomed it. It was clean, honest, unlike the air I'd just left behind. I climbed into my car, slammed the door shut, and sat there, fists trembling against the steering wheel. For the first time, there was no sadness, no longing, no desperate hope they would change. Only a cold, clear thought. They think they've won. They have no idea what's coming. At home, after Eli fell asleep with his arms wrapped around his worn teddy bear, I sat at the kitchen table. The silence was no longer hollow. It was purposeful, alive. I pulled out a notepad and with steady hands began to write. Plans, steps, boundaries, things I should have drawn long ago. When I finished, I leaned back and whispered into the dim, humming quiet, "Enough." The bookstore smelled like old paper and cinnamon, the kind of scent that settled into your bones and made you feel like you belonged somewhere. Eli tugged at my hand, leading me between the shelves stacked high with adventures and fairy tales. His laughter rang out as Marilyn handed him a new picture book, his cheeks flushed with excitement. I took a deep breath, letting the warmth of this place seep into the spaces left hollow by too many betrayals. Here, nobody asked for anything. Here, love didn't come with a price tag. Marilyn handed me a steaming cup of cocoa, the ceramic mug heavy and reassuring in my palms. I wrapped my fingers around it, feeling the tremble still hiding in my skin. As Eli flopped onto a beanbag in the children's corner, I found a worn armchair near the fireplace and sank into it. For the first time in days, the silence didn't feel sharp, it felt soft. Still, the weight lingered. The guilt, the second guessing. The ache of wondering if walking away from blood was an act of selfishness or survival. Maybe both. Curtis appeared by my side without a sound, sitting on the ottoman in front of me like a conspirator about to share a secret. He held out a photograph. Simple. Unframed. In it, Eli sat cross-legged on the floor of the bookstore, laughing so hard his entire body curved around the sound. Curtis smiled gently. "Thought you might want this." I stared at the image, my throat tightening around something too big to swallow. No tension in Eli's shoulders, no guarded glances, just joy. Pure, reckless, unburdened joy. I traced the edge of the photo with a trembling finger. Family isn't about blood. It's not about obligation or guilt or doing the right thing because you're supposed to. Family is who sees you without expectation, who loves you not for what you can give, but simply because you exist. Tears slid down my cheeks, hot and silent. Not from sadness, from release. Curtis didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Marilyn simply squeezed my shoulder once, warm and steady. I clutched the photo against my chest, letting the truth settle into the hollowed spaces inside me. I was free. I had been free all along. I just needed to remember it. Later, as we gathered our coats and said goodnight, I lingered at the doorway, the cold night air brushing against my face. Marilyn hugged Eli tight. Curtis ruffled his hair, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I felt like home. They don't own my future anymore. I do. The driveway was packed with cars, tires crunching over the thin dusting of Christmas Eve snow. The house glowed with lights and music, spilling warmth into the cold night air. But as I stood at the edge of the porch, adjusting Eli's scarf before sending him off to Marilyn and Curtis for the evening, I knew the warmth inside wasn't meant for us. Not anymore. I stepped through the door alone, the smell of roast turkey and cinnamon strong enough to sting. Laughter and chatter bubbled up around me, but it all sounded hollow, like echoes bouncing off empty walls. They smiled when they saw me. Of course they did. Masks painted carefully for the evening, pretending the cracks didn't show. I hung my coat, slipping into the living room with a heart that felt too large for my chest. Near the fireplace, Vivian clapped her hands together, commanding the room. "All right, everyone, let's get a big family photo." The cousins gathered, herding children like sheep. People laughed, adjusted collars, smoothed hair. And when it came time to call names, Vivian's voice was clear, bright, practiced. "Lacey, over here with your kids. Mark, Sheila, bring yours too." There was no pause, no glance around the room, no searching for the small boy who should have been front and center. Eli was forgotten. Worse, he had been erased. I felt the blood rush to my face, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the Christmas music. I watched as the camera flashed, freezing a lie into permanence. Vivian beamed. Douglas grinned stiffly behind her. Lacey tucked a stray curl behind her ear, laughter bubbling from her throat. I stepped forward, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough that the room shifted and settled its gaze on me. I took a deep breath, tasting the betrayal in the air. "You forgot someone," I said quietly. The chatter died. Someone coughed. Vivian blinked. "Lorraine, sweetheart, it's just—" "No," I said. "Not this time. Not again." I looked around the room, at faces I had once trusted. Faces that had smiled as they took and took, never questioning if there was anything left to give. "You didn't just forget Eli," I said, voice shaking but strong. "You chose to leave him out, just like you chose to use me, lie to me, manipulate me." I listed it all. The fake concern, the staged dinners, the money siphoned through guilt and expectation. Some faces paled, some looked away. No one spoke. Douglas opened his mouth to object, but I cut him off with a glance. Vivian took a step forward, words forming, spinning her web. I didn't let her. "You didn't just betray me," I said. "You taught my son that family can be conditional, that love can be a transaction." The weight of it settled in the room like a heavy snowfall. They could deny it to themselves, but they could never deny it to me again. Without waiting for a response, I turned, grabbed my coat from the hook, walked out the door into the cold, clean night. Behind me, through the cracks of that perfect house, I heard it. The beginning of the crumble, and for the first time in years, I didn't look back. The morning light crept softly through the frosted windows, spilling across the worn wood floor in long, golden streaks. Eli sat cross-legged by the heater, flipping through the pages of a book with sleepy concentration, a cocoa stain still lingering on the corner of his mouth from breakfast. I sat at the kitchen table, cradling a lukewarm cup of coffee in my hands, feeling the strange silence of our apartment wrap around me like a thick, heavy quilt. Not heavy in the way grief was heavy, but heavy in the way new snow was heavy. Soft, quiet, demanding adjustment. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt still. And stillness, I was learning, wasn't the same as loneliness. Sometimes, stillness was the sound of peace beginning. The vibration of my phone jolted me from the quiet. A new message from Vivian. "We miss you. Let's talk. Maybe you can help us with a few things." I stared at it, the familiar pang rising, a knee-jerk reaction of guilt, of duty, the instinct to reply, to fix, to smooth things over just enough so the peace wouldn't feel so costly. I placed the phone face down on the table. Not today. Maybe not ever. Later that afternoon, after Eli had finished building an elaborate Lego spaceship, I sat down with my phone again. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that one too. What was there to say? Some ties didn't require scissors or fireworks. Some ties simply died, withered from neglect, from silence, from the decision to no longer feed them. And maybe that was enough. That evening, Marilyn and Curtis invited us to their bookstore for a quiet New Year's Eve gathering. It wasn't fancy, just a few neighbors, mugs of cider, a makeshift countdown for the handful of kids in the reading corner. Eli laughed so freely, his voice rising above the gentle hum of conversation, that I had to turn away for a moment, swallowing a lump in my throat. Family. It was never about blood. It was about who kept choosing you, over and over, without agenda or expectation. I sat between Marilyn and Curtis, listening to the comfort of familiar pages being turned and the quiet chatter of people who expected nothing from me but my presence. And I knew this was home. Later, after we returned to the apartment and Eli had slipped into his pajamas, I tucked him into bed, pulling the worn quilt up to his chin. He blinked up at me, already halfway to sleep. "Mom," he mumbled. "Yeah, baby? We're gonna be okay, right?" I smoothed the hair back from his forehead, my voice steady and sure. "We're going to be okay. We already are." I stood in the hallway after closing his door, leaning my forehead against the cool wood, breathing in the heavy, beautiful stillness of our little world. Outside, the night stretched wide and unknowable, but for the first time in a long, long while, I wasn't afraid of what it held. Maybe the future would be messy. Maybe the past would always ache a little, but it was mine now, and I was finally free. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's that sometimes family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shares your heart without asking for anything in return. It's okay to walk away from people who only love the version of you that serves them. It's okay to protect your peace, even if that means standing alone for a while. Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing to build something better from it. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? I'd love to hear your story. Comment below and let's connect. Tell me where you're watching from, and if this story touched you, drop A or a simple 1 inch in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey and want more stories that heal, inspire, and empower, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share even more voices that deserve to be heard. Thank you for being here. Your story matters too.